Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope that you are all well and safe and looking after yourselves. If you're new here, my name is Emily and today I am going to be filming a really fun, well I think it's fun, a fun new tag that I have been sort of pondering over and mulling over for a while now, and I just thought it'd be really fun to share it, and if anyone wants to do a VR response, that would be so exciting. It's a tag that I was very much inspired to create after watching Candy, Soul and Soil's Dating the Tarot, which was a hashtag that I absolutely loved, and I know lots of other people loved it too. And this, while it's not about dates, it definitely relates to people and types of people. I did reach out to Candy to make sure that she was okay with this idea and that she was happy for me to go ahead. The hashtag is called #FriendsInTarot, and essentially what I was thinking of was all the different types of friends that you have in your life, and throughout your life, you know, those different archetypal friends who will always come up for you in your life. So I was doing a little bit of research and reading around that and different types of friends that people talk about, and some of the articles I read were really funny. So I kind of included some that are very universal and then some that are a little bit more niche. So not everyone is going to have like a witchy friend, but because I call myself a witch, I kind of do have some witchy friends. So for me, having a witchy friend, it's going to be a prompt, you know. So I have created quite a few different prompts that I'm going to do responses for now, and I would like to put that invitation out to all of you as well. If you want to do a VR in response to the tag and you've got a type of friend that you want to add in, just add it in, and I just think it would be so fun to see everyone's responses. So the idea is you have a type of friend and a tarot deck that corresponds with that friend because of the relationship, the tie that you have with that friend and that deck. It started to get me thinking about the types of relationships, friendships that I have with my decks, and I just thought it'd be really fun to share. So I'm going to get right on in and tell you the prompts and my choices. So I feel like the type of friend that everyone normally thinks of is the best friend forever. So the first prompt is the loyal BFF, the best friend forever, the soul connection kind of best friend who will always be there with you and for you. And for me, that deck is the Celtic Wisdom Tarot Pack by Caitlin Matthews. Now this is a deck that's got its own system. It's very different to Rider-Waite-Smith, but this one, it just has this like connection for me, and even though I don't use it nearly as much as my Rider-Waite-Smith, this is like the closest bond I've felt with a deck, I think. So these are the backs. I've edged mine. This is an out of print deck, but I did manage to pick mine up on eBay. It wasn't too expensive, and I picked mine up a few years ago now actually. This is essentially a beautiful deck that illustrates different Celtic myths. So it's got Irish and Welsh mythology mostly. I absolutely love the illustrations. They just sing, and learning about the different myths. I just feel like there's a connection here that can't really be described or explained, and I don't think that anything has ever come close to feeling this way for me. And I only really use this for very special kinds of readings that don't really follow any structure at all. This is my favourite card. This is the depiction of the Morrigan, and it's the Queen of Battle. All the suits are renamed. But it's just a beautiful deck, and this is a deck that is always out. I don't think I've got a soul deck, but if I did say I've got one, I think at the moment it's probably this is the closest. So for that reason, this is my best friend forever. The next prompt is the long distance friend, and this is the friend that you see every few years or every year or even longer than that since times of Corona, but whenever you see them it feels like no time has passed at all, and you can pick up right from where you left off and you're still like the best of friends. You know, this is someone who perhaps you've known all your life. This is a connection that is very strong and kind of transcends all of those trials and tribulations and life events, and you might not talk about the mundane things. You know, you're not talking about what you had for lunch or you know, what you had for breakfast, or you know, but you're talking about the big stuff, the big life stuff. And for that I chose my Bone Stone and Earth Flesh, and I haven't actually had this deck all that long because obviously it only was released at the end of last year, and now again I'm so sorry it is out of print, so I'm sharing decks that are out of print, but hopefully it will come back into print. I know Avalon has been doing some videos about updates and such. I know that that's something that other people would like to happen as well, but for me it does feel like with this deck I can leave it for a few weeks and then when I come back to it, it still feels the same. It feels like it's got the same wisdom, it feels like it's speaking with the same voice, and it's very sharp tongued. So, you know, I can see this going into a number of different categories as well. But for me, I think the thing that just stuck out is just that it's very constant, and again, it's out all the time. And even though I might not pick it up every week, that bond is there, that connection is there, and it feels like no time has passed since we last talked. So you can pick up exactly where you left off, and it always feels like very big things I'm talking to this deck about as well, and with this deck about. So for that reason, this is my long distance friend. The next prompt is kind of a fun one, and it is the dreamer, the one who never paid any attention at school, the one who's kind of flighty and free, and you know, I've got a few prompts that are kind of like this, so you can kind of like pick a few decks maybe that make you feel this way. But for me, the dreamer had to be the Moonchild Tarot, and this is just such a beautiful, beautiful deck. It's so whimsical, but it's also extremely deep and spiritual, and I've mentioned this in so many of my videos. I just adore this deck. It speaks in so many different ways through shapes and colours and celestial sort of scapes and symbols. It's a beautiful photo manipulated montage. This is one of my favourite cards actually. That's just such a beautiful way to depict the Hangman. There's so much balance in this deck as well. It's such a great deck, but with the balance there is that like flightiness to it and that sense of like abandon, and in a lot of the cards that can feel quite confronting in say the traditional RWS system, you have cards that are sort of very spiritual and take it to a different place, like this is the Nine of Wands, and there are things that you can speak to with the original meanings, but there's also another layer of like spiritual depth and meaning that goes into this, and so for that reason this is my dreamer friend. So next up is one I want to call the friend of convenience, but that sounds like you really don't care about them at all, so I'm going to say friend from work or school. But yeah, basically someone who is with you day to day, who you chat to regularly, who you see on the school run or at work, and you get on with them really well, and it's a comfortable and easy routine, you know, someone you're really comfortable with. So I could easily pick my Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial because that is definitely one of them, but the other one, it's the Lightseers, absolutely hands down. This is like in the top shelf in the center, and I know where to go exactly to get this deck, and it comes out regularly. I did my year ahead spread with this deck because it feels like it's such an easy read. It's very comfortable. This is one of the decks that I feel like I know really well, almost as well as the RWS, you know, and it feels like home. It's very comfortable, very safe, and so for that reason this is definitely the deck that I would choose as my friend of convenience. Although that has like negative connotations, I don't mean it like that, because this is such an important deck, and actually I've been thinking about getting another copy just to have another copy because I do use this a lot, and actually I edged it. Some of the edging has sort of like, I thought it was dry and essentially it wasn't, so when I put the deck back together it kind of like, and then it was too late, it wouldn't come off. But I actually quite like it. I think it looks kind of like aged, and because it's like a metallic edging I used, it just looks quite magical, I think. So I do like it, but it would be quite nice to get one that doesn't have that edging, or I could edge it again in something different, just a little bit more carefully, I don't know. But this is the mass market edition. I never had the indie. But this is just absolutely an everyday deck, a very comfortable deck, very routine deck. It is so easy to read with this. It is an everyday favourite. It's really comfortable, and it is also a deck that I go to for other people as well for readings. I know I can pull this out of my bag and read for any one of my friends. I will feel comfortable with it and they will feel comfortable with it as well. I think the imagery makes it so that the meanings from the traditional RWS system do come through, but they're just delivered in a slightly more modern, slightly more gentle way, and there's less of that kind of religious symbology as well there, which, you know, really helps with some people who might be a bit like not so keen on seeing things like the Death card or the Tower card or the Devil card. So yeah, this is a fantastic deck, and it is my friend of convenience. Next up, I have the instant connection. Did you ever have a friend who you met once and you just sparked, and then you were like, oh my god, I can't get enough of this person, and you suddenly sort of became best friends? I've had a few friendships like that in my life, and they never lasted that long because I think they were kind of at the time friends of convenience as well. They were sort of like little short, sharp bursts of like absolutely adoring each other, but it's not like those friendships ever ended badly. They never went south or anything. They were just pure like adoration and passion and like inspiration. Sometimes it's that like the friend that just inspires you so much and you just can't get enough of them, and like being around them all the time is like so fun. And there was one deck that popped into my head for this, and I think it's a bit of a surprising one, but it was the Gorgon's Tarot. And this is a deck that up until I got it, which was maybe, I think I got this a couple of years ago, and up until then I don't think I'd really heard of it. I just found it on Amazon and I kind of fell in love with it, and I was working a little bit with Medusa and using kind of the Medusa story for healing, to sort of step into divine feminine, to do some of that healing, some of that work. I found this to be just exactly the kind of deck that I wanted to use at the time, because being a Gorgon. So these are the backs, and it is a round deck, and I know that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't get on with it, but there's just something about this deck I absolutely adore. I don't know, the cleanness of the lines, the aesthetic of it, it's just so beautiful to look at. And it's simple, but it's complex as well in its contrasts. And there's so much in it that you can pick out. I just love it. I love the figures in it. I love the quality of the movement of some of the cards as well. The way in which you can kind of speculate about what each character is thinking, feeling, where they're at. You know, it's very simple, but there's so much depth and wisdom in this deck. And I love the like geometric shapes as well that are created by the different shapes and patterns and the different, you know, figures and the different creatures within this deck. There's a lot of different beautiful shapes. I just think it's a really, really elegant deck, and it's one that inspired me very, very much. I definitely picked this up before there was a mini version, but had I picked it up later, I probably would have gotten the mini because it's so large. I can't do large spreads with this. I use this a lot as a daily draw. It's just a beautiful, beautiful deck, and it's one of those ones that I sort of go in fits and starts with. So I haven't used this for quite a long time actually, but I am really, really keen to, because like I said, it's so inspiring to me. So this is the deck that it was an instant spark for me. The next prompt is the brutally honest confidant. Now this is the person who will tell you what you need to hear. Sometimes it won't be easy, but they will give you tough love, and they are the person who is ultimately supporting you all the way through, even if it might not seem it. And I have a few friends that I can think of who have done this for me in the past, and honestly their friendship has meant so much and been truly empowering and inspiring to have in my life. And the deck that I thought of for this friendship was the Marielle Tarot, and I've only had this deck in my collection for a very short amount of time, and very, very quickly this deck has become a trusted advisor. So I have the deck out at the moment. It's got beautiful silver edging. These are the backs. I'm sure a lot of you have already seen this deck. I've spoken about it as well a few times already, even though it's new in my collection, but I've always been so drawn to the art, and it was just a few of the images that kind of, you know, held me off, because I thought maybe I wouldn't be able to work with it. But honestly, I wish I'd gotten this sooner, because this is like, it's almost like medicine for the soul, the mind, the body. It tells you what you need to hear, sometimes what you don't want to hear. It tells it in a kind way though. It's sharp and it's fierce, but it's not brutal. I don't think it is. Some people might say it is. I think that there's space here to be held, you know, like that little lamb, like the lamb. And there's so much beauty in this deck as well. The art I do find in some of the cards very gentle and very beautiful, very romantic. But yeah, there's so much in here as well to delve into, and I love that it's its own system in a sense, because it's sort of a melding of all of the different systems, and there's so much beauty and wisdom in this deck. I think it's stunning, and I do think of it almost like a teacher, someone who's got a lot of wisdom and, you know, experience. It doesn't need to be someone older than you necessarily. It's not necessarily an elder, but just someone who is going to be there for you to give you that brutally honest, tough love that you need when you need it, and who has ultimately got your back, even if it can be painful to hear the truth sometimes. That's a real friend. That's a real friend right there. So another fun one, I thought about the adventurous, free-spirited soul. The one who kind of might be a bit flighty and might cancel arrangements with you just because they happened to like be on a walk that ended up being longer and kind of rambled around, and they sort of go where the wind takes them, and very inspiring, but not always like the most organized, very artistic, very fun, and very sensitive usually. And this is the kind of friend that for me, I'll end up like having a long conversation with throughout a night. You know, when I was younger anyway, when I had sleepovers, like you'd just be talking all night. The kind of person that you'd make art with, or that you'd go on long walks with, you know, that kind of person. So kind of similar to the dreamer. And for this particular friendship, I picked the Shadowscapes Tarot because this has so many beautiful kind of artistic qualities to it. It feels like a very watery deck and also like a very airy deck. There's so much inspiration and beauty and magic in this deck. It might not be on time, it might be a little bit scatty, a little bit disorganized. It is free-spirited though, and it is so beautiful. It's a very spiritual kind of connection that you have with a person like that, and often, you know, you'll be speaking, there'll be so much beautiful truth that will come out. It'll be the kind of connection where, you know, you can just talk all night and all of these beautiful things come out that you have in common and that you share, and you find you can talk to each other about anything. You know, the connection goes really deep, and it's just a beautiful friendship to have if you can find it and hold on to it. You know, it's magic, magical friendship, magical deck. Honestly, this deck is so beautiful, and now I want to work with it. And I don't work with it all that often, and I said this recently in my interview with Manuela, who very kindly had me on her channel, Place of Stillness, and I love this deck. I really love this deck, but I just never use it anymore because it's just so teeny. The art is just so teeny. And I know there was another version, was it the Danish version? But it had larger art. I know that some people were able to get hold of that, but I couldn't get hold of that. So I still have my English copy. I really do hope that they re-release this though with like slightly larger cardstock and no borders, and that would just cinch this, I think, for me as being favourite deck, because I think otherwise this could be like a soul deck. You know, the beauty of it, the magic of it, the fae energy. It's just, I can't get enough of this deck, honestly. And I say that, but I haven't used it in ages, but now I think I'm gonna have to get it out, have it on my reading table and just use it, because the magic of it is just captivating. So this is my free-spirited soul friendship deck. Next up, I have the wise mentor, the elder, the person who is going to be a guide for you, who is going to provide you with insight and wisdom. You know, it's crone energy, it's that elder energy. There's controversy around this deck, but for me, the mother piece just really feels like it has that for me. I have it in a mini as well. I originally picked the mini up thinking it was the full size, wanted the full size, so I picked up the full size. And I've got the book that goes with it as well. I edged mine in gold, which I love. I picked this up a couple of years ago. I didn't really realise about some of the issues with it. It was only when I started reading with it and the cards in question did come out and I read about them within the guidebook, and then I started hearing some more open conversations about it. I remember watching Nina at Shuffle Tarot use it quite a bit, and then Nina also addressed some of the controversies in a video on her channel, because this was a deck that Nina was using for a year, I think, to work with it and study. So I was enjoying those videos a lot, listening to Nina's experience with this deck. But for me, I've used this deck a few times for guidance, for readings around my relationship with my daughter and family dynamic kind of readings. And so for that, I almost feel like it's got a sort of like ancestral thread feeling to it, almost like a womb thread feeling to it as well. And so I like this deck to explore those kinds of things. And when I think about those kinds of questions I have, they're very personal, and I feel like I need to go to a deck that is going to give me some wisdom that is sort of wise, you know, age-old wisdom that stands the test of time, something that's going to be sort of archetypal, something that rings true across cultures, and that is just kind of anthropologically true. And so for me, this deck feels like that for me. It feels nurturing in that way. It feels like that energy. It feels like a contained space as well when I use this deck. I do feel close to this deck. I don't think I'd be very comfortable using this deck for other people because of the controversies around it, the discussions around it, etc. I would love it if the creators recreated the deck in a way where those cards in question were redone, rethought of, and, you know, then expanded upon and talked about the reasons why those cards had to be looked at again, to really explore the dialogue around it and really unpack it. so that everyone can kind of understand it and understand where we're at now and why those things aren't appropriate. We need to accept that there are things that did happen that weren't questioned back then, but that now are being questioned, and I'm glad that we are living in a place where we can do that. But I do think that the conversation has to stay open, and I'm not sure if the creators want to recreate the deck, so I think that there was some conversation around that and some controversy around that as well. I'm not entirely sure. I really would like it if they did address it in a way that was creative and gave, you know, an alternative deck that had the same essence but didn't have those problematic cards within it as well, and then just sort of explained it and in a way where everyone could understand it and digest it and then begin to talk about it more. I think that by talking about these things we can only help each other more to learn and then do better and to help spread that knowledge and understanding. And that's really important, you know, the acceptance that you're not always going to be right and that sometimes you will need to be corrected, and that's okay. And you know, I welcome that as well. So if anyone has anything to add, then please do feel free. All I ask is that any further discussion is done with like kindness and respect to everyone. That is the mother piece though, and this feels very much like a deck that nurtures me and my family, and that it feels like a wise mentor, a wise tutor, an elder. So the next friend is the friend who you can be completely honest with, and you can go into the deepest, darkest depths of your shadows and talk about your fears, talk about what's holding you back, and they can do the same, and it's like you hold space for each other no matter what. And there's this beautiful kind of symbiosis to this relationship. It feels like a very private relationship. It's where they really honor your secrets and your time and your energy, and I think that they accept you and you accept them, and it's very beautiful for that reason. And the deck that I've chosen for this is the Deviant Moon by Patrick Valenza. This is the borderless edition. I love this deck. This deck is definitely a shadow work deck, but it is also such a gentle deck for me. I know that just sounds like a contradiction in terms, doesn't it? But this holds space for you like nothing else. This is the kind of person who you could literally tell all of your secrets to, and they will keep them and they won't judge you for them. They won't judge you. I suppose it's a bit like in Sex and the City when Carrie is having an affair with Big. She tells Samantha and Carrie says, "Aren't you going to judge me just a little bit?" And Sam says, "Not my style." And that is what this deck does. That's the way this deck is. I feel like it just holds space for you when you're feeling low, when you're feeling in trouble or in pain. This is the deck, and I do feel like there are things about this deck that just feel very gentle as well. So for that reason, this is the friend who you can tell anything to. They're not going to judge you and they will keep your secrets. The next prompt is the friend who feels like a brother or a sister. This is the friend who you literally grew up with, your oldest friend who you can remember. Maybe you were in nappies at the same time, you went to the same schools, you went to the same preschools, you were always together. Maybe you were next door neighbours. I have a friend who very much fits into this for me, and she's just beautiful and incredible and I love her. And for me, this could only be the RWS, and so I have picked the Centennial because I think this is the one that I just reach for most frequently, and everyone knows all the images already. But yeah, this deck just feels so comforting and it feels like a member of the family. This deck feels so familiar and familial in every single way. I've talked a little bit about how the images feel so resonant for me and feel so familiar. I almost feel like I had these archetypes in my head when I was born, you know what I mean? I know obviously I wasn't, but it's that collective unconscious again, and that idea of this thread that runs through these. And Pamela Coleman Smith's artwork, Pixie's artwork, is just incredible, because this deck really probably is my soul deck, you know, in all of its different forms. I'm definitely looking to curate my own beautiful kind of RWS collection and working on it slowly. You know, I'm really hoping to be able to get a blushing full one day, and you know, I would like to get the 1909 restoration as well from Drive-Through Cards. But yeah, these decks are, you know, important parts of history, and I feel like they're important to me as well because of what this deck is to me. So this is my brother or sister, the friend that feels like a family member. So next up I have another kind of spiritual one, and it is the spiritual advisor, and this is kind of similar to your elder, the one who is giving you that kind of wise parental kind of guidance. This one I feel is a little bit more nuanced. This one kind of gives spiritual teachings and wisdom, and it's not always something that you understand straight away. Spiritual teacher, someone perhaps a friend who is an ancestor or who is on a spirit plane, maybe a familiar or someone maybe even like a guardian angel for you. So they may be of this world and they may not be of this world, but it's that friendship that comes from that spiritual kind of connection, and it's a really nuanced connection because you receive different downloads, and it can be like inspiring, but also it can lead you down different rabbit holes. So for me, the Falakos Tarot is my spiritual advisor. This is the spiritual connection. This is the, you know, the beloved dead almost. This is like that. It feels like that anyway. It's got that kind of ancestral element to it. So you see it's very nuanced. It's almost like a melding of few of these prompts, but for me this is absolutely a spiritual teacher, but it's just more of a kind of like free spiritual leader, because it's like it's your path, and really in a way it could be you. It doesn't actually have to be anybody else. But this deck is that for me. It's that spiritual advisor. If you are a member of an organized religion, it could be a teacher from that, or it could be someone who's enlightened, you know, it's got that kind of wisdom to it. But yeah, this is full of so much depth and wisdom. I think you could go to something like soul cards for the same kind of, you know, wisdom, the same kind of energy. For me, I just wanted to bring that kind of energy into a prompt, and this is just the perfect deck. This is absolutely a spiritual teacher for me. So the next prompt is really fun, and it is your witchy friend from your pagan circle, or from when you grew up together and you were both witches, or, you know, obviously if you're not a witch, omit and put in something else. But this, for me, I had to include it because the deck just was screaming to be involved. And for this, I've chosen the Pythonic Tarot, and this deck is an indie deck that I picked up from Etsy. The seller is in the UK. So these are watercolor paintings. They are kind of similar to the Shadowscapes. Manuela observed that when I showed her these cards the other day. They are so witchy though, and they have so much in terms of mythos involved from various different pantheons, and there's just so much magic. And there's like this occult kind of feel to it as well. Like there's so much in here, the symbolism that you can delve into, and it's just so beautiful and stunning. So this is my witchy best friend. Yeah, you could call it your witchy BFF, but this is the witch friend from your circle. It's a really special kind of connection. It's so nice to be able to share what you're working on with your witchy friends, and if you're lucky enough to have a witchy friend. Maybe for you, if you don't identify as a witch, then it's someone who is a tarot friend, or someone who is a spiritual friend, whatever religion you resonate with, whatever you practice. Perhaps it's someone who has the same ethics and morals as you in terms of, like, you know, looking after the planet and stuff. So you can use this prompt in whatever way is fitting for you, but for me, this is my witchy friend. Next up, I have the polar opposite. This is the person who is so different to you that you really shouldn't get along, but you do, and you have fun together, and even though you're so different, there's something that it just works. And for me, that deck is the Thoth Tarot. I will always be a Rider-Waite-Smith girl by heart, I think. And what I have read and learned about Aleister Crowley, I'm not also thrilled about, but I do love the Thoth Tarot. There is part of me that knows I probably will never be best friends with this deck, but there's a part of me that knows I will always be friends with this deck. Even if we're not best friends, we'll still be friends. And the art in this deck is just so beautiful. Lady Frida Harris's artwork is probably what does it for me. It's just the beauty of it, you know, and I can read with it. It reads really, really incredibly. I'm taking my time with learning about it and reading about it, basically because there are so many books I want to read and there's just not enough time. So I'm giving myself years and years to learn the Thoth because it's not my main system. So I tend to read more intuitively with it, to be honest with you. I do read up about the meanings and I apply my own knowledge and understanding, and I also use my intuition when reading with this. But it is such a beautiful deck and it just clicks, it just works. I think it probably is the art that does it for me. I am also very, very interested in ceremonial magics and learning about Thelema, and even though Thelema obviously comes from Aleister Crowley and, you know, a lot of that Golden Dawn, it involves Aleister Crowley, I still want to learn about it all, and there's a lot to learn, Learning about the Tree of Life, for instance, and the Sephiras, and working more ceremonial magics. I don't want to use the term high magic, low magic, because it has those unpleasant connotations, but definitely more ceremonial magic I'm very interested in learning about, and, you know, know, pulling in all of those correspondences and understanding and putting them together with my knowledge of tarot as well, and from a magical perspective but also from a tarot reading perspective, both they fascinate me. So the Thoth Tarot was like a gateway for me for that, and it is the friend I will always be friends with, but we're never going to be the same. We're very different. We're very different, but we're still friends. Next up is the gardening friend, the country loving friend, the one who you go for walks with all the time, the one who eats organically and recycles everything and is conscious of what they're consuming and waste, etc. It's the earth friend, you know, potentially this could be your witchy friend as well. And yes, for me, this deck is none other than the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. I get such an earth mother vibe from these cards. There is so much beauty in this. Again, there's so many animals in this deck, but this feels like the person who does everything they can to support the planet, you know, and it's inspiring you to make changes in what you do and how you move through the world. You know, what is it that you can make a change, because, you know, it can feel like there's so many things to do and I can't do all of those things, so I'll just do nothing. But actually it's the little things that we can change. For instance, for years I haven't been using traditional shampoo. I swapped out my bottles a few years ago and I use shampoo bars and I use a menstrual cup, and it's these things that I can do that help the planet. You know, when my babies were born I had reusable nappies for them, so I got those when my daughter was born and then we reused them for my son. So, you know, it's those little things that really help, and not everyone can do everything, but it's sort of what you can do to help. And this deck feels like it's got that wisdom, that essential earth wisdom, and it's got that beautiful nourishing wisdom to it. And yeah, this is that friend, that earth mother friend who is genuinely trying to do their best for the planet, and it's just beautiful. I love it. Next up is the popular friend, the one who gets invited to all the parties, the one who everyone defers to, the one who's just always been the most popular. And my choice for that friendship is the Wild Unknown Tarot. And it's kind of a deck that ruffles a few feathers, I feel, because of the popularity of this deck. But it is a beautiful deck and there is much wisdom. And it's not just about being popular, of course it's not. But there's something about this person, you know, that is intriguing and that has some sass to them. This is someone who sparks a fire, you know, this is someone who can speak at a party and it's just really charming and enthralling and fun and turns heads. This is the head turning person, you know, the person who gets your attention, and the person who isn't afraid too much to the beat of their own drummer either. They might be quite indie, but they're still really popular. Everybody likes them, and yeah, the people who don't like them, it's probably because they're ruffled by this person and their extremely wonderful, vibrant personality, their colourful, textured personality, you know. And there's so much beauty in this friendship as well, like especially if you can give and take with this person. You can learn from each other, share things together, have fun together. Very fun kind of dynamic sort of friendship to be in. And it's kind of like you never know where it's going to go to next. Like you might be at one party and then end up at another party and you'll just discover crazy things about each other that you have in common. This is the popular friend, the one who a lot of people really like, but then it also ruffles some feathers, and they are just essentially a really exciting, vibrant person who isn't afraid to be authentic, and I love that. So this is the popular friend. So that brings me to the end of this actually very long hashtag. So if you made it all the way to the end, then thank you so much. It's been really fun. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, please do leave me a comment below, like the video, and share it with anyone who you think might be interested to watch it, and perhaps do a VR as well. Absolutely, if you want to do a VR, I would love to see them. So you can use the hashtag FRIENDSINTAROT and let me know below as well if you're planning to do a VR as well, and I will look out for it. I do feel kind of nervous about it, so I hope that you've all enjoyed it, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments box below if you've got any questions or any comments or any thoughts that you'd like to share. If you did enjoy the video and you haven't already subscribed, then please do think about subscribing as well. I create content about tarot, witchcraft, magic, spirituality, and other related topics, so if you'd like to see more around those areas, then please do think about subscribing. And while you're subscribing, don't forget to hit that little bell notification, because that's the way that YouTube is going to let you know when I create and upload videos just like this. So with all of that said, thank you again so much for joining me. Thank you to Candy for the inspiration for this tag. I hope that you stay well and safe, and I look forward to seeing you again in another video soon. Take care. Bye. Mwah.